Okay, let's unpack this. Our sources for this deep dive are pointing towards something pretty powerful, actually. That music isn't just, something you listen to passively. It's presented as this fundamental human impulse, a kind of primal creation, even predating language, predating writing.
Yeah, the sources really hit that hard, thinking about rhythm, humming.
Right, even your heartbeat.
Exactly. It's all wired in, they suggest. And what these documents really emphasize is that, well, making music isn't some exclusive club you need an invitation to. It's framed as something inherent, something that's probably already happening around you, maybe within you.
Right.
The sources make a strong case that you don't need special permission or, years of training just to tap into it.
Exactly. So the mission for this deep dive, pulling from all this material you've shared, is really to explore how you listening can unlock that built-in capacity. We're going to try and pull out the most, insightful and practical ideas from these sources. Show some easy ways in, entry points to creating sound, making music yourself.
Yeah.
Even if that word musician feels, I don't know, a million miles away right now.
Right, like it's some other kind of person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into that core idea these sources kick off with. Music is everywhere, and it's incredibly accessible. It really pushes back against that idea that you need a fancy studio or, formal training to even start.
That's definitely one of the key insights. The material gives really concrete examples of where this is already happening, just in everyday life.
Like what?
Well, it points to things like, singing in the shower or in the car.
Okay.
Or even just tapping out rhythms on a desk.
Yeah.
It frames these not just as like random habits,
Yeah.
but as these subtle ways people are already sort of engaging with sound, maybe building vocal confidence or developing a sense of timing without even realizing it.
And what's brilliant, I think, is how the sources immediately bring in technology to lower that barrier even further.
Yes.
They specifically highlight free digital tools. GarageBand, BandLab, Soundtrap are named
Right.
as just straightforward ways to start exploring sound digitally
Yeah. You can literally start creating on devices you probably already have.
without spending a penny.
Exactly. No cost barrier there. The main message, and it's crystal clear in the source material, is that the requirement isn't to be a capital M musician.
Right.
It's just about being willing to listen and respond to the world of sound, both the sounds around you and maybe the ones inside you.
But let's be real for a second. A lot of people hit these mental roadblocks, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
You might think, oh, I need an expensive guitar, or I just don't have the space, or my neighbors will kill me if I make noise.
Yeah, classic barriers.
And your sources actually anticipate these exact things, which is really helpful.
And importantly, they don't just list the problems. They offer practical, source-based workarounds for them.
Okay, like for cost, what do they suggest?
Well, the most compelling point they make is that your main instrument, it's already free.
Your voice.
Your voice.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the material suggests using, found objects, things around your house, pots, pencils, even just using apps on your phone, many of which are free or low cost.
Yeah, the source material also lists some specific budget-friendly instruments, too. It mentions the ukulele
Yeah.
for being simple, 4 strings, small, affordable.
Easy to handle.
A keyboard is mentioned as great because, well, you can plug in headphones, keep it quiet.
A little privacy there.
And then smaller things like a harmonica or a kalimba. They're pointed out as being super portable, low cost.
Little pocket instruments.
Plus, the sources always mention checking for secondhand options. Good tip.
Definitely. And for those space and noise concerns, the documents lean pretty heavily on digital solutions.
Right, the headphones thing again.
Exactly. Using headphones with digital instruments or DAW, that's digital audio workstations, basically music software. That's a major recommendation. Yeah. Exploring apps is another way to experiment silently.
Okay.
It even suggests something called whisper singing.
Whisper singing.
Yeah, apparently to develop your ear and sense of pitch really quietly.
Huh. Interesting.
Or, practicing at specific times when it won't bother anyone. Or even using things like pillows to muffle acoustic instruments if noise is a really big issue.
Wow, those are actually really creative ways the sources suggest tackling those fears head on.
Yeah, practical stuff.
Okay, so those are fantastic, really actionable ideas for getting past those first hurdles. Once those barriers feel a bit lower, where do the sources suggest someone actually begins? How do you start putting this into practice? They seem to focus on simplicity, which feels key.
Absolutely. One initial step suggested is just mimicking sounds.
Mimicking.
Yeah. hum along to songs you like, try to recreate little melodies you hear out in the world.
Okay.
The source frames this as a really foundational way to start building your ear, understanding pitch more intuitively, just by copying.
And you're not just left alone to figure it out, right? The
No.
material points towards using online resources.
Oh, yeah. Tutorials that are built into apps or just easily found on places like YouTube.
Yeah.
They're highlighted for learning basic instrument stuff or production techniques. Lots of help out there.
Mm.
A specific technique the sources recommend for getting started easily is looping.
Looping. Okay, what is that exactly?
Well, it mentions specific apps like Loopy or Launchpad as tools that make it simple to just repeat a sound or little musical phrase.
Ah, okay.
But the concept of looping is just about creating a repeating foundation, something you can play over or build on top of. You could even do it manually, sort of.
Ah, so it's less about needing a specific app and more about that technique, building layers.
Exactly.
And speaking of layers, the source also mentions layering sounds as another accessible technique. How does the source describe that?
Right. Layering, especially easy with digital tools, is basically just stacking different sounds or musical parts on top of each other. So you might record a simple beat, maybe just clapping. Then you add a hummed melody over it.
Okay.
And then maybe you layer in some other sounds you've recorded or found. It lets you build up something more complex, step by step.
Without needing to play it all perfectly at once.
Precisely. It takes the pressure off.
That makes a lot of sense. Improvisation is another suggestion I saw, just sort of playing along with the song, using whatever you have.
Yeah, just jamming along.
And the sources are surprisingly encouraging about this. They basically say, even if you're totally off key at first,
Which you probably will be.
right, you're still learning something about structure, developing your musical ear just by trying to fit in with what's already playing.
Exactly. And if thinking about melodies and notes feels like too much right away, the sources really emphasize starting with rhythm.
Ah, back to basics.
Totally. Clapping, body percussion, stomping, snapping, or just finger drumming on a table. These are presented as really foundational first steps. And the powerful insight here, I think, is that you don't need to understand scales or chords right at the beginning. The most important thing is just to start hearing what you're doing, feeling that pulse.
Okay, so once you start experimenting a bit with sounds, with rhythm, you might find yourself naturally drawn towards a specific way of doing things or maybe a specific instrument. Your sources offer some guidance on choosing a path, right, based on what excites you and fits your life.
Yeah, they do. They briefly describe what different instruments tend to offer just from a learning perspective.
Okay.
So the piano or a keyboard gives you a very visual layout that can be really helpful for understanding theory, melody, harmony. You see the notes laid out.
Right, logical.
The ukulele, as we mentioned, is highlighted for its simple chord shapes. Makes it pretty easy to quickly accompany yourself singing.
Fun for sing-alongs.
Yeah. The recorder, maybe surprisingly, helps develop breath control.
Ah.
Drums, or something like a cajon box drum, are very tactile, very satisfying for exploring rhythm directly. And then again, your voice,
Yeah.
a built-in tool for learning pitch, tone, expression.
Yeah.
The main point the sources make is that each offers a different way in and teaches you something unique about music. There's no single right first instrument.
The material also touches on that classic analog versus digital thing, not really as a competition, but just, different experiences. How do the sources frame that difference?
They suggest that analog, so physical instruments like a guitar, piano, drums, offers that immediate tactile feedback. You feel the strings, the keys, and it helps develop physical dexterity, muscle memory.
Right, that physical connection.
Yeah. Digital approaches, on the other hand, are praised for making things like layering, recording, remixing, and portability incredibly easy. You can carry a whole studio on your laptop or tablet.
And what's particularly interesting is the insight that actually a lot of creators today just blend both, right?
Oh, absolutely. The source gives examples like taking something acoustic, maybe sampling a simple ukulele strum you played,
Okay.
or even just a vocal hum, like, and then integrating that into a beat you made digitally. That shows you don't really have to pick one lane. You can mix and match.
Yeah, that's cool.
And building on that, the sources specifically list techniques like looping, layering, and sampling as being really accessible tools that kind of bypass the need for traditional instrument skill, at least initially.
We touched on looping and layering, but sampling, how does the source define sampling in a way that feels, doable for anyone?
The sources describe sampling really simply.
Yeah.
It's just about capturing any real-world sound.
Any sound.
Yeah, they give examples like the clang of a coffee mug,
Okay.
The ring of a bike bell, maybe the sound of rain hitting a window.
Yeah.
And then taking that captured sound and reshaping it or reusing it as a musical element. It's presented as this really creative way to make music directly from the world around you. It really emphasizes play and exploration over, technical perfection.
That sounds fun, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. The source material goes beyond just the how-to stuff.
Yeah.
It dives into the deeper power of music, what it actually communicates. It spends a fair bit of time discussing how music translates emotion through melody and rhythm.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. It explains how, say, a slow melody in a minor key can instantly make you feel a bit sad or maybe intimate, while a fast driving beat gets you energized.
Yeah.
Or a really sparse, repetitive rhythm can build suspense.
Yeah, you feel that physically.
Exactly. And the suggestion for beginners is incredibly intuitive. Instead of starting with complex notes or theory, just start by asking, what emotion do I want to express?
Okay.
And then just experiment with sounds. Play around until you find something that feels like that emotion. Trust your gut.
That connects directly to this other idea the sources present. Music as a kind of language that goes beyond words.
Yes.
It highlights how music can just transcend linguistic barriers, cultural barriers.
Cool.
It sort of bypasses our thinking brain and speaks straight to the body, to our shared human experience.
Yeah, it's like a shortcut to feeling.
Yeah.
The sources frame music as this powerful tool for building empathy. Because we can have these shared emotional responses. It allows for nonverbal self-expression in a really profound way.
Right.
And it connects people on this fundamental level, no translation needed. The sources actually call it one of humanity's oldest rituals, a universal tool for belonging.
Wow. That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got these simple starting points of a sense of the why behind it all.
Yeah.
How do the sources suggest making this a regular part of your life? Building that comfort, that confidence, rather than aiming for like instant rock star status.
Right, not about mastery overnight. The material offers really practical tips, focusing on creating small, manageable habits.
Like what kind of habits?
Well, suggestions include just playing or experimenting for maybe 5 minutes a day.
Yeah,
That's
just
it.
5 minutes. Okay.
Or singing along to one favorite song every day. Or simply keeping an instrument out where you can see it, easily accessible.
Ah, so not hidden away in a case under the bed.
Exactly, maybe on a stand in the corner, just reducing that friction to picking it up.
Those small habits feel much less intimidating than practice scales for an hour, don't they?
Totally, much more sustainable. The source also wisely mentions the value of finding online communities for accountability, maybe, or just inspiration. Linking back to that sense of belonging music can create. And includes intentional listening as a practice, too.
What does that mean? Intentional listening.
Just actively analyzing why a particular song makes you feel a certain way. What is it about the rhythm, the melody, the instruments?
Okay.
And then maybe thinking about how you might try to recreate that feeling, even in a very simple way, with sounds you can make.
Gotcha. And for those who might feel ready to maybe explore creating simple songs or beats, the sources provide some entry points there too, without needing to be like a full-on producer.
Yeah, definitely. Again, starting small. Maybe begin with just lyrics or a story idea if you're thinking songwriting.
Okay.
For making beats, maybe use some simple loops or free sounds you can find online.
Right.
Or just record melody ideas, little sketches using voice memos on your phone.
Easy.
Or, like we talked about, sampling everyday sounds and building something simple from those. Birds chirping, kitchen noises, city sounds.
And these activities, they circle back to those free tools mentioned earlier.
Exactly. GarageBand for Apple users, BandLab, which works on pretty much anything, Audacity for desktop recording, Soundtrap as a cloud-based DAW. Lots of options that don't cost anything to try.
So pulling back a bit, what do the sources ultimately say are the benefits? Why bother engaging in this kind of sound creation, even if it's just for yourself?
Well, they list a whole range of personal benefits, things like emotional release, stress relief,
We could all use that.
for sure, building discipline, creative confidence, enhancing your listening skills, even memory. It can even act as a kind of personal log, they suggest, like a diary of your moods or thoughts, but in sound.
Oh, interesting.
And the material includes this really powerful concept here, that music is a nonverbal way to say something, suggesting that sometimes even just a single note, played with feeling, can hold more truth or emotion than a whole paragraph of words.
Wow, yeah.
But the sources are also really realistic. To actually get those benefits, you often have to confront that fear, that voice saying you're not good enough.
The inner critic.
Exactly. They strongly emphasize how important it is to just let go of perfectionism, especially right at the start.
That's incredibly reassuring, actually. The material is really clear that your first attempts absolutely will not sound polished, and that's not just okay.
It's expected.
It's expected, yeah. Singing off key, that's part of learning pitch control. Repeating the same simple chord over and over again.
Yeah.
That is progress. You're building muscle memory, getting comfortable.
Exactly. And the fundamental point they keep coming back to is that rhythm is something you feel, not just something you measure perfectly on a grid.
Right.
And the ultimate goal isn't really to sound like someone else you admire. It's to find and cultivate the way you sound, your unique voice.
That leads beautifully to perhaps the most significant point the sources make, I think, which is that the value of making music doesn't depend on it ever being shared or performed for anyone else.
This is such a crucial takeaway. The sources really highlight that its purpose can be entirely internal, private. It can function purely as a sound journal, just for you, a way to decompress after a stressful day. Or even, they suggest, a tool for bonding, connecting in an intimate way with someone specific. A child, a friend, a partner, making sounds together.
The powerful message here seems to be that the act itself, the act of creating sound or music, is inherently worthwhile, even if nobody but you ever hears it. It's presented almost as a form of active presence, being present in your own life.
And presence, as the sources beautifully put it, is often where the most authentic music actually begins.
Yeah.
Not trying too hard, just being there with the sound.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into your source material, the core message really resonates, doesn't it? Music creation isn't some rare gift for the chosen few.
Not at all.
It's accessible to everyone. It's built on these fundamental human capacities we all have for rhythm, for tone, for emotional expression, stuff you already possess.
Yeah. The final encouragement from the sources is really empowering, I feel. Don't strive for instant greatness. Forget that.
Right.
Just begin with curiosity. Play a single note on whatever you have. Tap out a simple beat on your leg. Hum an idea that's been stuck in your head. The purpose isn't to impress anyone else. It's purely, fundamentally, about expression. Your expression.
And that leaves us with this thought maybe for you listening to Carry Forward. Given how readily available music creation actually is and understanding its deep power for personal expression, for connection, what sound or rhythm in your world just out there today will you maybe listen to a little differently now? Or perhaps even dare to respond to with the sound of your own?